Greetings, friends. You can't trust banks at all. So I'm going to give you 9 specific reasons in this video, but I want to start off with a little story here from a few years ago when I had this language school in Northwest Toronto. My then business partner and I were doing business with TD Bank, Toronto Dominion Bank. And we happened to be in there one afternoon, and everyone in the bank receives an envelope with a $20 bill in it and a brochure with information explaining why you should do business with TD Bank and how great they are. And everyone else there must have enjoyed that. Wouldn't you enjoy a $20 bill? But my business partner and I, we looked at each other and we looked at the staff and we had nothing but scowls. We were like, these motherfuckers, they should be giving us $200. They should be giving us $1,000. Okay, then that would be nice. Then we can have a conversation. All right. So why we were acting like that? Because maybe when you get into business, you start to realize a bit about how banks really are, how they hurt the average person, how they have nothing but contempt for the average person. And in addition to that, we all know they're dry, they're boring, they're lifeless, they're more like institutions. But anyways, so that's why we reacted with contempt towards them, and that's also showing that they have no tact at all. That's their kind of marketing strategy this way. Just, oh, you happen to be in the bank, you get $20. But anyways, let me be more specific here. Let me tell you a bit about the history. Being a banker, it comes from the word banchiere in Italian. Now, banchiere was literally someone who sat at a bench. So the bank is probably coming from that word for like a stone bench with a table. And they'd sit up in a street in Renaissance Italy, late 1300s, more into the 1400s. Because in the early 1300s, the Medicis, they were basically gangsters. But by the 1400s, they're becoming more like banchieri, and they're money changers in the street. So that's where the word banker comes from. And for hundreds of years, you know, there were always problems with banks, but for a long time, banks actually did facilitate commerce, and they facilitated the growth of the economy. Originally, you know, financed these voyages to get the insurance. You'd lose a ship trading spices to India. You need some insurance. You need someone to take the risk on that. And it would help if you're sending out a large group of ships. That takes a lot of financing. So these money changers get into that business, and that basically, fast forward, it gets developed by the Dutch in Holland. They take it to a new level. Then later on, so you can see it move from Florence and Venice. You can see it be, you know, banking improved by the Dutch in Amsterdam, around there. And then later the London, you know, the British Empire, they're perfecting it. American banks today. So that's sort of the progression. But it already was becoming corrupted by the early 20th century with the creation of the Federal Reserve. So the main problem with banks, and this isn't just banks, this is just sort of our economy right now, is fiat currency. So that's reason number 1, that you got to be really suspicious of banks in general, is because they are participating more than anyone else in fiat currency. What does that mean, fiat currency? Well, originally it meant faith. Back in Florence, or not, probably, you know, Venice, because it's on the ocean, it's on the Mediterranean, because it'd be close to the ocean. So you have to have faith that this guy is going to pay you if, you know, the voyage doesn't go well. So credo means I believe. That's the root of credit, or fiat comes basically to have faith, to trust. And so fiat currency is what we see today with these banknotes. And originally, what did a banknote mean? A banknote was a piece of paper that you take to the bank to do what? To prove to the bank that they owe you some gold. Right? Now it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't claim for any gold at all. That system was slowly phased out during the 20th century, and it was killed in 1971 by Richard Nixon. It could be resurrected. I think it would be a good idea to get gold back in there, but we have gold or silver. You have to understand, folks, that it was always gold or silver. That was money for hundreds of years, for thousands of years. And then in the 20th century, we got this wacky idea that money is paper, but that paper isn't resting on anything. If you have an economy doing well, then you can keep the game going for a long time. But if you're not producing value, if you're constantly, you know, losing your wealth, you're sending all your gold and silver away, and your economy is going down, then more and more that fiat currency is resting on nothing. It's a house of cards. So you could see an economic catastrophe, and then you'd have the purchasing power of that paper money go way, 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 way down. And then we call that inflation. Right? That happens throughout history when fiat currency gets overinflated. But we've never been experiencing with pure fiat currency paper money for such a long time. Like recently, that hasn't happened in history. It's not a normal thing. and it's going to crash sooner or later. So that's the main problem with banking. It's just participating in fiat currency. But more specifically, the second reason is what we call fractional reserve lending. And that means that if a bank has $1 in real money, if it was back in the day real gold, today just $1 in fiat currency, which is itself perverted, but let's just say $1, $1 American dollar is in the bank, $1 Canadian dollar is in the bank. With fractional reserve lending, they now lend out $9. Doesn't matter that they don't have all the $9. They lend out that other $9 on the basis that it's very unlikely that there will be a run on the banks, that everyone will be coming trying to get their money back. What can go wrong? Nothing can go wrong with that, right? And it's great because it's going to oil the economy and everyone's going to have credit, and they love to create this credit. They love to create these relationships. They love to create slavery. It's almost interesting how they do this. And then with that, they can lend out mortgages. Oh, guess what? Lending out more paper money that was essentially printed into this bubble. So the bank, with this fiat currency, together with their fractional reserve lending policy, is able to create these mortgages, these commitments, basically for you to pay them money that they never really had in the first place. It was just sort of printed and then signed as an agreement that you're going to have to now pay this money to them as it comes to you through your salary, which is coming to you through the creation of paper money from the mint or the Federal Reserve in the case of the United States, which is operating outside of authority. They're not really overseen by anyone. They're like a private bank, but they're printing money for the nation. How was that ever allowed to happen? Only through ignorance. So those are the main problems. Think of a mortgage as a fraud, a type of crime towards you. Don't even get into it. I mean, okay, it depends on the situation, but it's become very perverted. Third reason, pathetic interest rates. Now we're getting into more of the specifics. I had to start with some of the more general. We're getting into more of the specifics now. So pathetic interest rates. So all banks offer you pathetic interest rates. We're talking less than 1% interest on a checking account. Or maybe they offer you some other tax-free savings plans. They offer you some other accounts. Generally speaking, no bank can offer you anything that the stock market can offer you on returns. A good stock market portfolio should offer you at least 4 to 5% annual return on your money. And yeah, it's fiat currency. It's just a big bubble. But even then, it's better technically than what a bank is going to give you. Banks are so slow and low interest rates. So the potential for growing your wealth is silly. You're even going to shrink your wealth if it doesn't keep pace with inflation, and there often is inflation. If there's no inflation, well, then you didn't lose anything. But specifically, you could think of G.I.Cs. I don't know if you have them in the States. I don't know if you have them in other countries. A guaranteed investment certificate. We have these in Canada, and seniors like them a lot, people who are retired or older, because it gives you that guarantee. It's guaranteed by the government. Isn't that wonderful that the government's getting involved with finance, and they guarantee you what? 0.9%, 1.5% on your $60,000 investment, on your $40,000. Oh, so you'll get what? Less than $1,000 per year? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And the only reason they like it is because they have that guaranteed. But in a healthy economy, any investment should be giving you at least 5% per year to 7% per year. I'm not a fan of the stock market. I think that's risky too. But if you're smarter and you play your cards well and you invest in foreign stocks and get out of the US and Canada and all that stuff, you need the right foreign stocks. Other foreign stocks, if you're smart and you invest in gold and silver, you diversify, then you can avoid this crash. But oh my goodness, don't get caught up with all your wealth in the fucking bank. That's the worst thing that can happen. Okay. So number 4, they issue credit cards. Now, I don't like credit cards in general. I think sometimes we just need credit cards because it's easy to pay for things. Oh, I got to pay for my plane ticket online. Oh, I'll pay for that with a credit card. It's more difficult to pay for things online with a debit card. Sure, you can do it in certain circumstances, but overall, it's more easy with a credit card when you're traveling and you get a credit card. Sure, you can use a debit card, but there are certain situations where you can't use your debit card. I think you would find that. So but that doesn't mean that everyone necessarily likes the idea of getting into debt. Some people don't have a problem with that. I think that's really fucked up. That same former business partner of mine, I don't work with him anymore. Not because he's a bad guy, but because he didn't have a good financial sense. got into all this debt. It wasn't a problem for him to take out 7 or 8 credit cards. Can you imagine that? And then all of a sudden they're raising the rates. It's like, oh yeah, now the rates are going up. These people, some of them will take out, like you get into more debt to pay off one debt. So now that has interest on that. You might even take out another credit card to pay off the debt on another. And as bad as this sounds, governments will do the same thing. So anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself here. These banks, they issue credit cards from their own personal bank. So in Canada, we have the big 5 banks: Toronto Dominion, Scotiabank, Bank of Montreal, Royal Bank, and Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, or CIBC. They will issue credit cards from their own bank. And okay, I don't really like that idea. I don't really like the idea of credit in general, but maybe you can make an argument that, you have to have some form of credit to make an economy function. Fine. But should you really get the banks involved with this? I don't think that's a good idea. And to make it worse, this is what really irks me. They call you up. They constantly tell you to raise your limit. Oh, you only have a $5,000 limit, raise it. Or you only have a $2,000 limit, raise it to $5,000. Oh, you've had it for $5,000. You've been paying your bills. I mean, if you're not paying your bills, maybe they wouldn't be calling you. You're paying your bills, and they want you to raise it. It's ridiculous. That's not responsible at all. That's the last thing we should be doing in our society. We should be saving money. We shouldn't be getting into debt at all. We shouldn't be buying property. We should be saving our money. We shouldn't be taking on long commitments, getting married when we have, men shouldn't be getting married. Not in Toronto, not in Canada, not right now, not if you're a young man. But I mean, geez, even if you had better financial circumstances, you got to be very careful in today's society with how precarious things are. So that's one thing I don't like about the banks. They're very irresponsible. They encourage you to get into debt. They're always calling you with these credit cards. And another reason number 5, is they've been increasing fees. Now, it might not cost you that much, but you notice these fees here and there popping up on your monthly bill. Oh, this is for information protector. Oh, this is for security. This is for some reason. This is for administration. Maybe if you fight them on it, they might back off, but they're doing it very sneakily. So be aware of this. Study your monthly statements and see what they're doing. You might be noticing, oh, what's this $10? What's that $15? They're trying to be sneaky. They're being very sneaky here. Remember, they have nothing but contempt for you. Nothing but contempt. The 6th reason, if you try to do business out of the country, let's say you have a friend in Thailand and you want to send this friend some money to do business for whatever reason, he's your friend or whatever. You might have success sending money out of the country, but then the bank might stop you at some point. It could be the receiving bank, it could be your bank here in North America or whatever developed country you happen to reside in. They might say, you know what, no, we're not going to let you send anymore. And you might say, well, nothing's going on here. There's no fraud. There's nothing like that. They'd be like, well, no, we have our reasons. And by the way, you won't be put in touch with the person in charge. I'm just saying hypothetically, okay? But I know. You won't be put in touch with the person who makes the decision. They'll be in the head office, in their ivory. They'll be in like Wizard of Oz. That movie was actually based a lot on banking and stuff. And so the Wizard of Oz, he's kind of based on bankers in some sense. And it's really true. They're very secretive. They make you deal with the local branch. Oh, everything has to be through the local branch, through the local manager. That's great. They won't. But the local manager is essentially a puppet. It's useless. It's useless. And he can only relay information to the head office. The head office is completely cut off, completely secretive. They will never give you any names. They will never give you any phone numbers. I don't even know where it is. I guess I could find out if I really wanted to. But they would never reverse their decision. They just don't like that some people want to send money out of the country and they want to use the excuse that fraud is going on. But really, they have some perverse reason for doing it. I don't know what it is, but they have their perverse reasons for doing this. They like to slow things down. They like to keep tabs on people. They don't want people getting free. They don't want people escaping from their system, from their game, because they want to have you play on the monopoly board. And in Canada, those 5 banks are controlling the monopoly board. Maybe there's some other small startup banks I don't think they're going to succeed. If they succeed, they'll have to be working for one of the other five, because believe me, I'm sure they have it all controlled. They get favors from the government. This is not a capitalist society. This is crony capitalism. When the banks have favors from the government, when the market is cornered, I don't think they even want to really compete with each other. I think they're all pretty much the same, and they split the market. I don't think they're competing at all. I'm not convinced of that at all. Because if they were competing, if there were real free action and not this monopolistic spirit, then they would go out of business very quickly. But no, they want you to play on their board, but it's a mistake to think that capitalism is a monopoly game. That maybe they invented the monopoly game as misinformation as to what capitalism is. Monopoly is a fight to the death. It's like you're trapped on the board and you have to play this chess-style game until one player owns everything. That's not exactly how it works. That's grossly misrepresenting what capitalism is. You're not limited to this board. Wealth can be created infinitely across the world. It can be redefined. It could be new technology. There's never a shortage for produce, for precious metals, for all these things. You're not necessarily restrained. That comes with government intervention. That comes with laws. And that's what the banks love. Oh, they love these regulations. They want you to stay playing their game. Anyway, so they'll stop you from sending money out of the country. They won't always do that. Sometimes they'll do it and they'll give you no reason, no law, not even any specific policy. They'll just do it. And, they're not personally accountable for that. You don't even know who makes the decision. The seventh reason is these banks invest in bad assets, okay? So that makes their future stability questionable. Think of what happened in 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. A lot of, maybe not in Canada, but in the US, there were bank failures, there were many financial collapses because of all these companies, including banks, that had tied up their investments in what they thought were very secure mortgages, but they were subprime mortgages. That had been so blown up, that market. They were offering these mortgages to people who should never have been taking out a mortgage. Never. They're basically poor people. And once that popped, a lot of banks went under. So you have to question the smartness of the people running these banks. The eighth reason is that, or the eighth reason specifically that you should not trust banks, is because, think of this. There's no guarantee that if there's a financial crisis in the future, there's no guarantee that these banks won't prohibit you from withdrawing cash, even if you go to the ATM. Look at what happened in Greece around the same time, 8 or 10 years ago. Maybe Cyprus too. Cyprus had some crazy problems, but in Greece there were people trying to get money out of the ATMs, trying to get euros. And it was only dispensing, 100 euros. You can only get 100 euros today. They were literally, the banks, probably in concert with the government, I don't know, but or on their own decisions, were preventing people from getting any cash. Maybe because they just wanted to preserve cash. Maybe because they didn't really have any. That could be the reason too. So don't be so sure that couldn't happen in Canada or the United States. The last reason, the ninth reason, is these banks, they probably monitor us. Sure, they monitor us, and they likely share that information with the government. So there you have it. Those are 9 reasons that you shouldn't trust banks. You must be very suspicious of banks. And I know I sort of touched on other investment options. I'm not going to go into that in this video, maybe another video. But at least you understand that don't get all of your wealth in banks. Think of some other options, because these banks are not a great place to put your wealth, and they're trying to enslave humanity. They're trying to keep you down. They're trying to get you in this slavery system. A mortgage is a type of slavery system. Paying to the bank, they're controlling the flow of this money. They don't really care about the whole overall economy growing. It's about the flow coming to them. When the Spanish conquistadors went into Peru, went into Mexico, originally, for that society, that colonial European society, the wealth wasn't really in land, because the king of Spain owned all the land. The wealth was in how many Indian slaves you owned. and therefore they'd be mining for you in the mines and producing silver and gold, and that was what it was all about. But that's not really a great system, so you see sort of that's maybe a poor comparison, but a similar system with these banks. They're not really, using a smart system that's going to develop the economy, and that's why you must be suspicious of banks. Just to give you one final story here, I worked with this financial advisor for about 2 years when I was in my mid-20s, and this guy, he definitely was pretty smart. He was able to make me a bit of money, and he knew how banks work. He told me. He said, yeah, you can't get it. I mean, certainly about the interest rates and all the stuff they offer you, they're not going to give you a good deal. And then one day he just disappeared, and I never saw him again. And I got a phone call like, oh, he's gone. He went to work for BMO. He's working for Bank of Montreal now. And I just was so shocked. And he never explained that he was going to do that. He just took off one day and did that. And I'm sure he was one of the more successful people at this financial investment company, which you shouldn't really trust either. But it's better than a bank. But like, what kind of perversion? Not perversion, but it's like selling your soul. Or like, I mean, it's like going back. It's like you going into the Matrix. You know what it's like in there, but it's like he chose to go back in there, and he's going to make a lot of money for Bank of Montreal. I'm sure he's going to be really successful. But that's fucked up, man. That's really fucked. And he sent me some text a few months later saying like Merry Christmas or Happy Thanksgiving, and I didn't respond to it. Obviously, why would I? I never talked to that guy again. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now. Hasta luego, amigos.